Airing on Asheville FM 103.3 LPFM in Asheville, this is The Final Straw Radio, a weekly anarchist and anti-authoritarian broadcasts and podcast emanating out of occupied Chalagi land in southern Appalachia. We bring you voices and perspectives from projects and struggles all around the world, and you can find our archives, transcripts, ways to follow us and support us at thefinalstrawradio.noblogs.org. This week, Ian talks with cartoonist Aaron Losty about his new graphic novel, The Hanging, out from Strangers Press. Among other topics, they discuss formative works, collaboration, and making genre fiction for a small press audience. In the second half, they talk about Aaron's experience as a co-founder of the Cartoonist Cooperative, the state of the organization 3 years after its inception, decision-making processes, and recent campaigns.
I am here today with Aaron Losty to discuss his new graphic novel, The Hanging, out now from Strangers Publishing.
Yeah, no problem. I've been writing with the intention of improving for about 13 years, and I've been drawing my own comics with the intention of improving for about 8 years. And I've mostly self-published over the past several years. And obviously I've collaborated with Ed at Strangers for The Hanging. It's been mostly flying solo. Well, not solo, but me and my wife collaborate a lot on our works. My wife is Becca Carey. She's a professional letterer and general graphic designer in comics as well. And I think that's mostly it. I'm a co-founder of the Cartoonist Cooperative, which is an initiative to help raise the standards within the comics industry as a whole. And it's been one of the more rewarding things I've done in comics in the last few years. So
that's great. I have some questions for that I'll hold to the end because I want to talk about your book a little bit first. So I assume that most people who are into creating comics come from a background of reading comics, and I wonder what comics you grew up with, and I guess what that culture was like growing up. You're from Ireland, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, as a kid, I was exposed to a lot of classic European comics like Tintin and Asterix and Obelisk and the Beano and Dandy. If you're familiar with those, they were like newsprint comics.
Sure.
And I think Dennis the Menace as well. But I didn't. I always make the joke that I didn't learn to read until I was 21 because I didn't really read until I was out in my teens. And I think the first comic I think I actually had was like a Looney Tunes comic my mom had brought back from New York. And the most fascinating thing about it was the ads that were in it. I still have the comic, but there was it felt like looking into a different world because this would have been in the early 90s. But yeah, and I didn't actively start collecting and reading comics until I was probably in my late teens. I remember my sister actually bought me the collection of Watchmen when I was 16 or 17. It was around the time the movie came out.
Okay.
And that just went completely over my head. I don't know if this is comics. I don't know what comics are. It wasn't obviously didn't really get to grips with it until later in life when I revisited it. But stereotypically, I think at the time, the first two collections I had of comics was Watchmen and The Dark Knight Returns.
Okay.
And yeah, I knew nothing about Frank Miller when I got that, and it blew me away. And I was like, gee, when was this made? This was in the 2000s. I was like, when was this made? This feels like cutting edge. And then I look at the credits and it's from the 80s or whatever. And I was like, I felt like I was circling this odd world that I knew nothing about. But I'd drawn all my life and comics kind of always just seem to spin back into my orbit throughout life until I actually started making them.
Sure.
Until I didn't draw comics until I was in my mid-20s, but I was writing since I was 20.
When you started writing and drawing, did that kind of foster a like a total reconception of the art form?
Yeah, for sure, because it's like, it's one thing to like understand the language enough to read it, but to understand the language enough to compose it in the sense of like sequential images and what elements of storytelling are told between panels in the gutters, like that's like the mark of like a very coherent comic, that your brain can fill in those gaps between the images.
Right.
And yeah, I don't. You know what? I don't now that you've asked that, I don't know if I have any memories of being like, oh, I've cracked this. I just remember just making stuff in and just hoping it landed.
Sure.
But I did actively study comics myself, like in the hopes of improving my storytelling. Because the only reason I started drawing comics was because I couldn't afford to hire artists. Like I never really wanted to draw comics, even though I drew all my life. But I couldn't afford to hire anyone, and I just felt a bit cheap to ask people, even of like entry level amateur caliber that I was. I just felt to ask people to work for free, so I
Sure.
just started drawing my own comics and just kind of just figured it out from there.
Coming up to The Hanging, can you maybe point readers to the influences and the predecessors to your work there, and I guess just speak to the concerns that informed it. From a visual perspective, I sense that it draws in pretty equal parts from both genre stuff and what would be conceived of as, I guess, art comics. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. Like I'm interested in the length and breadth of comics from mainstream to underground comics, so I feel this kind of lands itself somewhere in the middle. Like I feel often when you couldn't just pick up an art comic or an underground comic and give it to your friend who's never read comics and expect them to like be able to read it, because like again, comics are a language in and to themselves. Like whereas you could probably give most people a Batman comic off the stands and say read this, and they could, and they'd get what was going on. So I guess I don't know. I honestly like. I do feel like somewhat of in my head. I'm like this underground comic maker, but I'm also like this hack that makes stuff that's I don't know. I guess a bit more clinical and clean than that sort of world. I don't know where it's like. You want to be an artist, and you also want to be a mainstream artist so you can make some cash. This sort of thing, but.
I think that, especially in the ways that we engage with comics in social media, it all seems to kind of flop over each other. You know what I mean? Everything seems to kind of just exist in this one big pile now, and I think that The Hanging, I think, is a good example of that. But I also think that it comes down to how we're all consuming things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. And if you want specific names, like artists I'm looking at when I made this was like Manuel Fior and Blutch and Rizzo and Jana Lagbe, if you're familiar with those.
Sure.
And those were like specific artists I was looking at. But then, yeah, there's just a plethora of stuff. I can't get away from Frank Miller, unfortunately, because it was such an inception point for my understanding of comics that like I have looked at his work a lot. Like
that early stuff really goes down deep, and it kind of plants itself, I think.
For sure.
So would you say that The Hanging is in keeping with the concerns of your previous works? And I guess I wonder what kind of ideas and stories you tend to be drawn to telling.
Yeah, it's definitely in keeping with previous works I've made. Like, to name specifics, it would probably be Clearwater and A Blaze Beyond the Pale. in that they're somewhat social, as far removed as they are, they're like somewhat social commentaries on where I grew up, and just the trends of stuff I've noticed around me, and all this, it's not anything profound. These are all things we all see every day. But unfortunately, they're the stories that I gravitate to, where it's more so just the worries of the average person and the woes of existing in society right now. But I would say there's definitely a through line between The Hanging and Blaze Beyond the Pale. And in some ways, Clearwater, even though I made Clearwater between those two books, and I'm still making Clearwater. Clearwater is kind of a prequel to everything in a way, in terms of it being just caked with filth before it forms a clear idea. But yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
And so in the case of The Hanging, did the characters precede the plot, or was it vice versa? Because I find that I'm sorry, I just find that there's such a strong core to these three brothers.
No, it was plot first. I remember, oh God, it was a long time ago, but I dabbled in filmmaking, and I was making short films, and I had an idea for a short film that was essentially the concept of The Hanging, that there has been an invisible alien invasion that has launched every nuclear warhead on Earth, and the film would center around a mother and a son just existing in this world. And I remember at the time thinking, I can't write this yet. I felt like often I have. Not often, but I have those ideas sometimes where I'm like, this is a great idea, but I'm not ready to write this. Like, I'm judging myself to say that I don't have the chops yet, so I'll circle back to this. So that's kind of what I felt like with The Hanging. And yeah, I just knew it was going to center around the hook was going to always be the invisible alien invasion, and then I just let the brothers take me on a spin. I don't know. It's hard to say where these brothers came from, but they just came alive when I knew I wanted the environment to have such anxiety literally hung over the entire story.
Well, that's interesting that you mention, having the chops. I wonder then, as an artist, when is there an inciting moment when you decide that, yes, now I'm ready, or was it you've kind of worked your way through the other ideas, so now that one is next up? How does that work?
No, it's not really. It just kind of feels like the idea, like not so much the idea falls out of you. Like when you're writing or creative, you always have ideas. Like I have I have like a black book of ideas, but they don't mean anything until I actually get stuck in there. And I remember with The Hanging, I guess it's more so like having the energy to think about this idea, because it might be like a particularly heavy concept.
Mm-hmm.
And your body will just kind of tell you when you're ready to write it. Like often when I try and plan, this is my next thing, this is what I'll do next, I'll get stuck in and I might write a draft of it. And then I'm like, I'm not sure if this is the way. And then I might end up waking up one morning and writing a note about something. And then suddenly I just have energy for that. And it's the fuse is lit. And then suddenly that's the next thing I'm making. So it kind of, I go through these sorts of, these meandering paths.
Sure.
And I don't necessarily, it's hard to say, to plan like this is my next book. The Hanging wasn't like a book that was like on the schedule. It just came alive and I was like, oh, I'm making this now, I guess.
As this story feels very much drawn from life, even with the supernatural or science fiction elements. So I wonder, are you trying to tamp down or amplify the parallels that these stories have with real life? And I guess my other question, when was the hanging written from the respect of, I guess, if you even map that stuff, what else was going on in the world? That might be a pretty big question, I guess.
Yeah, I'll try and answer it as best I can. If I finished drawing the hanging in January of this year, and I probably spent the best part of a year drawing it. So I probably wrote, I think it was probably 2023 when I wrote the entire script and had something that I could thumbnail. And we had just moved to Canada from Ireland at the time. And it's hard to say. I feel like a lot of my work is born from just my frustrations with life.
Sure.
So I don't know if there's any one thing that was going on that made me think, oh yeah, this is why I'm writing this. More so just like an ongoing, malaise of life, I guess. But yeah, I'm not too sure where to draw the parallels with what was going on in my life at the time, but I don't know. I just always have a lot to say about my hometown, so I guess.
Sure.
Yeah, I do feel like my anxieties with the world and my woes are certainly what drive most of my stories. I usually get called out for how somber my stories are.
So can you talk about your use of color in this book? In Arpad Ok's review in Comics Beat, it's kind of how this got onto my radar, they note the use of the red, black, and green as evocative of Palestine. And was this what you had in mind? And in general, I guess, as a creator who is on the ascent, what is it like to read criticism of your work?
I love criticism. I love great criticism. I feel like comics criticism is always like, I don't know, it feels like a friend group and no one wants to actually critique the work,
Sure.
And I love a good critique. I personally would prefer, like I always say, I only ever make comics to entertain my friends, and I have friends that read everything I write, and I almost every time I make a comic, I'm trying to entertain them, but in the back of my head, I'm like, I want to disappoint this person, in a sense that, like, I want to throw them a curveball. I want them to have something to say about the work. And yeah, I like a good review if it's a good review. Like the review you mentioned was great. And but yeah, no, I find it's because it's such a small ecosystem, a lot of critics are like afraid to upset people, I guess. I don't know. It feels like that, but I personally like to read criticism because I like to improve. And I've pretty thick skin. If someone has like a scathing review and it's completely off base, I don't care about that. Like whatever. Like, and also even the good stuff doesn't stay with me. So either or. You can't. Unfortunately, if you want to ignore the bad, you also have to ignore the good at times as well. But in terms of the color palette, and this has been something everyone's been asking me at, even because we had like a soft launch at TCAF in Toronto earlier in the year. Ed had come up for the show, and that's the main thought. Like that was like the main thing people noticed when they picked up the book was like it's the Palestine colors, and I was like, I made this book without that in mind. This is just a happy act. I can tell you what the influence was. Because Akira, when it was originally published in Young Boy magazine, they would print the first 4 pages because it obviously like it's like an released in anthology sort of format. They would print the first 4 pages in a 2-color palette, and each installment had a different palette. And I think it's the 3rd chapter in Young Boy magazine had this palette, so that's where I robbed it from. And it's just honestly a happy accident that it's the Palestine colors, of course. Like, I'm not upset that people are drawing that conclusion, like, because free Palestine, obviously. But yeah, that was it. Like, I would love to say I was making a really profound political statement with the palette, but I just robbed it from Akira.
Do you off topic? Do you have that Akira Club book?
Akira Club, yeah.
Oh, that's a great one.
A friend of mine was moving from Ireland, and they couldn't take the box set with them, so I inherited it.
Oh, so good.
Yeah, incredible.
Producing genre material in the milieu of small publishing changes anything about the work as compared to putting it out to a wider audience. And I guess I'm talking about in both the conception and the reception of it.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely does. Because when I'm working with Ed or I'm self-publishing, it's no holds barred. I'm not like worried about. Obviously, I could release stuff in short format issues, but I'm not worried about the restraints. I can do what I want. I don't have an editor looking me like. If that's what you mean in terms of like collaborating with like a larger publisher.
Sure, that is what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it definitely changes it, because whereas I'm writing for myself and to entertain my friends, and my wife reads everything I write, I'm trying to entertain them. Whereas if I'm working under an editor, I'm trying to appease the editor, so that's something you have to take into play, and you have to neuter yourself to a degree. And it's not something I'm opposed to. I'm just saying that's just the reality of working with an editor. And obviously a great editor isn't going to get in your way, but it's kind of like the invisible person in the room looking over you when you're conceptualizing these things, or when you're working by yourself and self-publishing, you're never thinking like, oh, I don't know if they'll go for this. I don't know. It's right. Like, well, it's what I say goes. It doesn't matter. Like, I can in a sense. And obviously there's pluses and minuses to having such freedom like that. And I'm sure we could all do with a great editor that could, tell us where to trim the fat and where to feed the pig, Sure. So, yeah.
Okay. So I think that an often overlooked feature of making, I guess, genre comics in particular, is the happy surprises that come in collaboration. So you've worked with a few different people now, and I wonder if you could talk a little bit about what makes for a good collaboration, or a fruitful one, I guess.
I love collaborating personally. Like I love just going crazy and being by myself and just doing whatever, and just being a complete vision of what I wanted or what I was trying to say. But I love collaborating. It's a true fruit of the industry itself. Like I worked with Matt Emmons recently on Daystar, and that was incredible fun. Me and Matt had before I speak about that, to answer your question, what makes a fruitful collaboration is just communication. And honestly, it's like equal parts communication and trust. When I'm collaborating, often I'm collaborating with people I know, and I'm not second guessing their decisions. When they decide to go one way and it's unexpected to me, I'm not questioning it. I'm on the same ride as them, and they might feel the same way when I make decisions. I'm typically collaborating with people as a writer, and as with Matt Emmons on Daystar, we had been meaning to collaborate for a couple of years, and we just couldn't get anything to stick. And then I just said to Matt, just tell me what you want to draw. Just tell me what you want to draw, and I'll write a story. And that it was a very organic way to work with Matt. We have very similar sensibilities, and the inception point for that book was a meteor strikes a boat in the swamp. Like I have a little sketch I did that I sent Matt. I was like, a meteor strikes a hamlet of animals that live in a boat that's shipwrecked in the middle of a swamp. That was the inception point. And then I knew vaguely where we were going, but I would just send him a paragraph for a scene, and he would be like, yeah, that's sick. And then I'd script it, and then that's if anyone who's read the book, you'll notice like it's almost like diary entries, the chapter breakdown of the story, just little snapshots of Massimo's life. But yeah, certainly me and Matt are great friends, and again, very similar sensibilities. There's no fear in suggesting anything or critiquing anything or raising concerns about things. Again, that's paramount to collaboration. And I love collaborating. It's one of my favorite things about comics. That's such a collaborative process. I say I'm solo on every book. Every book I've done is designed and lettered by my wife, and she's as I think Stephen King used the term the ideal reader. Like his partner was his ideal reader, and that's it. Like I always know, like if I pitch it to Becca and she's like, yeah, I'm like, okay, I'm on the right path. But like, when she says no, I'm like, okay, let's get back to the mines and figure this out. But yeah, so I'm saying I'm by myself, but I'm really not. Like every story passes through the filter of my wife because I trust her over everybody, So
does your wife bring things out in your storytelling that you generally overlook, maybe?
That's hard to say.
Okay,
but she will certainly. She's definitely my North Star in a sense that I can float or something and she'll be like, but what's the point? Why would a character do that? Why is she going here? Why is he doing this? Or just simply, it's very easy to get lost in the weeds by yourself and you're just writing something that isn't entertaining, and ultimately that's the goal. And I've scrapped whole ideas based off of conversations with my wife where I'm like, she's right, this isn't gonna float. Like, and then it's a rare occasion where I push back against her sensibilities, and then she was like, oh, okay, you're right. I couldn't see the path, but that's very, very rare, to be honest. So it's almost great in a sense that we trust each other that much that I know, like, I can just. She's like the moral compass of it all. That she'll keep me on track.
Okay. So, as a storyteller, what considerations go into denying a reader a tidy resolution?
Oh, none. I don't care. I'm always. I think it was Hassan Osman Hello. If you're familiar with, he's a letterer and a designer. He did panel. He was the editor of Panel by Panel Creator, stuff like that. He's fantastic. One of the best letterers in the game. I think he said, I can't remember exactly what it was, but he was like, never trust a blurb Aaron Losty has written. And it's true. I almost don't like putting blurbs on my book, but I like The Hanging mentions aliens and an invasion. The interior of the book doesn't have a fucking single syllable about any of those things. Like in a forthright sense. But yeah, no, I guess, I don't know. I just never like to write the obvious answer as an ending or a conclusion to a story. I always, I don't know. I just like a quiet ending, Like no one's trying to. This isn't superheroes, and it's a world-ending event every week, or every month.
Sure.
I don't know. I feel like happy endings need to be earned, and I would say The Hanging ultimately has a happy ending, but or at least it's not a super downer ending. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's almost like a game for anyone who regularly reads my work, where like he's built up these characters. They deserve something. Are they gonna get it? And they may or may not, but they might not get it in the form you expected. But I don't know. I find too clean an ending really disappoints me in other work, so I try not to give super clean endings.
Do you think that maybe it comes down to a demographic thing, who's buying what, but do you think that in general the comic book readers today are more permissive of subtlety and more willing to spot the creator. Do you know what I mean? To spot the creator, some degree of, giving them a wider berth to do what they want.
I think it really depends on the
Sure.
reader. Obviously, someone who's, I would say the majority of people who are going into a comic book shop to buy monthly comics are probably happy with what they're buying and the stories they're being told, and they should be. A lot of them are great, but I think it's probably an editor to editor basis as well, like how much they're allowing the writers to leave in the gutters. Like,
Sure.
Do they need to over explain everything? But certainly I feel people who are reading indie works, they don't need their hand held. I'm sure if someone just randomly picked up my work, I don't know how accessible it is, to be quite honest. I would love to think anyone could pick up my books. But yeah.
So if I could shift gears a little bit here, can you talk a little bit about your experience as a co-founder of the Cartoonist Co-op? It's in what, year 3 now?
Yeah, this is the third year. Yeah.
Okay.
We just celebrated our 2nd year anniversary in March. Yeah, honestly, it's been a vast amount. I've never been involved with anything of this level of organization, and it's made me realize the talents I have and do not have. But just seeing a community come together is crazy. Like, we have I think we've 1,500 active members, and it's just been incredibly rewarding. No, I've had a pretty cold summer with the co-op because I've just been so busy, and it's obviously a volunteer basis. But our membership are just incredible. Like, the amount of time and energy so many people put into our efforts it's awe-inspiring. Like, during the summer, we had our first online only month-long digital comic book festival called NIF, which is named after our mascots, Nibford and Inkling. And yeah, it's just amazing. And we've recently just announced our first awardee of our digital laureate. So they'll be supported from the efforts of the co-op for the next year. Yeah, I don't know how much you would like me to go. I can obviously...
I'm very interested. So I'm interested in... first of all, I'm interested in whether the reality of it is at all in keeping with what you had initially envisioned.
Oh, not at all. And I mean that in an incredibly positive sense. When we first started during the pandemic, when it wasn't the co-op, it was a Discord that Sloan Leong had set up. And I'd say there was maybe less than 100 cartoonists in the Discord. And it was just kind of like a place for us to hang out, share work that we couldn't share online. And then Sloan floated the idea of maybe we should have like this mutual aid, in the sense of we all promote ourselves, because we'd had several creators in the group who had just been burned by publishers who had taken all the rights of their book. They're not getting great advances, and they're also not putting any marketing money behind the book, so the books aren't selling. And then it's like, what's the point? I could have just done this by myself on Kickstarter and made more money, and be rewarded in that sense, and still own all of the pie. So that was the initial inception, was like, we should just like agree that we'll all self-promote each other, like, and actively do that. And then it kind of snowballed. Like, within the space of a few weeks, we were talking about organizing a large group of people, and having actions against publishers and raising up the quality of the industry. And that was it. Like, my initial thoughts were like, oh, we're going to help people set up Kickstarter pages, and we're going to have self-promotional or mutual promotional threads on Twitter and in our newsletters, and then suddenly we're like, it's much of a much more vast picture of our goals was painted for me, and I was like, wow. And then suddenly I just found myself as a co-member of the co-op, because at the time when we founded the 6 I just had a lot of time and I was super active in the Discord. I loved being part of the Discord and sharing my art and looking at everyone's art, and I just had a lot of energy for the cause when I realized just how big it was. And it very quickly, the Discord as like a place where people can go, the importance of that space, I just cannot understate it, like how important the space is for cartoonists. It blows me away when I go to shows and we do like stamp rallies and stuff, and people swing by my tent. We just like hordes of people swinging by that just want to be involved. But yeah, I had no idea what I was getting myself in for, and I'm glad I didn't.
Can you go back a little bit to your comment about learning what you're good at and what you're not good at?
Yeah, I think honestly, I'm a personality whore. I have no skills when it comes to organization. I'm very techie literate. It's very hard. Now, I do as much of it as I can and that I can teach myself, but it's purely like a lot of this stuff just doesn't sink in for me. But when there's an opportunity to host a panel or go talk to this organization in a Zoom call or go speak to this prospect member or that stuff is easy. That stuff's great. You want me to do an interview? That's where I'm great at organizing in the room when you tell me to be somewhere at 7 p.m. and I'm there and I'm delegating. Perfect, great, fantastic. But I have found, well, not so much anymore, but initially I found it like difficult that like this space was online. And even though I come from the generation of like forums and message boards, it felt like I was in a different realm for a while. But yeah, like to be harsh on myself, I'm an in-person person as opposed to an online person. If that makes sense.
It does make perfect sense. Yeah, it's been there's a lot that's been done, but can you give listeners some highlights as to the bigger actions? I've seen some some skill shares and stuff like that around, but from your perspective as an insider, what have been the big moves that you've made within the co-op?
That's a great question because I'm not entirely sure what I can speak on right now.
Okay.
But the online co-op the online convention that NIF was like felt like such a huge thing. Just bringing us together on this like incredible catalog of creators. But in terms of actions, it's off the top of my head.
I guess I could, if it's helpful, maybe campaigns would be a better way to put it.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's all. Yeah. I'm actually, I mean, as much as I've had time to be part of the campaign committee, but yeah, that has been incredibly fruitful. We have a submissions program where members can submit a book that is most of the time it's books that haven't been published yet, and we will organize a promotional campaign for the book. That was the main objective of the co-op before we spread our wings, was these promotional campaigns. And it seems to have been incredibly fruitful. We're running internal data collection right now to see actually how fruitful these campaigns have been. Obviously, we've just ended our second year, so we've run several campaigns now, and we have a lot more data to comb over to see how impactful these campaigns have been and where we can improve. Obviously, with social media, what it's come. It's not as fruitful as it used to be, but other avenues have become more fruitful, and it's just kind of like bending to that sort of ecosystem.
So to wrap up, there might be like one more after this, but the members of the Cartoonist Co-op, they are, I think, in varying stages of their respective careers, and I think would it be fair to say that they have among them different goals for themselves?
Oh yeah.
So I was just in preparation for this interview, I was kind of looking at some of your Bluesky stuff, and you mentioned a need for better composed emails. Can you talk about doing comics as a profession? And in your conception, does that simply come down to making a living at it? Does it come down to how you carry yourself among your peers? What does that look like? And what do you think the benefits of whatever kind of self conception are? Does that question make sense?
Yes. Well, to speak on my goals personally, I've tried to do other things, and I simply cannot. This is the only thing that keeps me sane. And the goal has always been to make a living, and by that I mean earn a modest living so I can pay rent and pay for food. And that's not by choice. That's because that's what I have to do. This has to be fruitful because, I would love where I could just be a full-time artist with no questions asked, and there's universal basic income, and I get, but that's not a reality. I have to make a living. But ultimately, if I won the lottery tomorrow and never had to work, I'd still be making comics. If I, was forced back into full-time employment in a job I don't care about, I'd still be making comics. Unfortunately. But what was the other part of that question? The goals of the co-op, or the members of the co-op?
Well, I guess talking about comics as a profession, and I guess what your conception of a professional is. I mean, is it just dedicating a certain amount of time to it? Is it living on it?
I don't know. Professional, I don't know. It's anyone who's making a comic to me is a cartoonist to any quality. If you've had the gusto to, none of this is easy. Like, if you've had the gusto to make the comic, you're a cartoonist. You wrote it, you drew it, whatever. Maybe you and a few friends made it. And I don't really care for like drawing these lines. I just want to. I'm happy to respect everybody. Like, I'm not going to disregard someone's work just because of their end goal, whether it's like a summer project or they want to work for Marvel and draw Spider-Man. I think they're all valid goals. Like, we're the ultimate umbrella over everything is we're all just artists and storytellers. And I don't know. I guess that's somewhat of a nebulous answer, but
I didn't think it was a nebulous question. So.
But yeah, no, I don't know. It's hard to define. Like, I would call myself a professional, and I make a meager income. And yeah, but on the email question, and it's a similar comment I had on criticism in comics, that everyone treats it like a classroom. They treat it like, like a playground in the schoolyard. People speak in too familiar a voice. Like, like, you email me about an opportunity and you don't send me your portfolio, and then I have to Google you, and then I find your Bluesky, which is under a different name, and then you don't have a link to your portfolio online, and then I find the portfolio in some random Bluesky post, and when I go on it, when I click on the images, they don't enlarge, so the images are like these minuscule things on the screen, and I don't know if that's just common sense or what. I don't know, but I did preface that post by saying my call to action, because I'm putting together a small anthology, and my call to action was super casual, but for all that is holy, like, learn to send a coherent email with clear actions to what you want from me. You know, like, you're asking to be part of something, but I don't have any of the info. Especially with people 90% of the people who got onto me, I didn't know, and they're not sending me a portfolio. I don't know.
I should have asked this earlier, and I meant to. Can you say a little bit about how decisions are made in the co-op, and maybe as an example, talk about the recent announcement of the fellowship, how that was decided upon?
So we have an internal committee called the steering committee, and as of right now, it's all of the 6 positions are held by the 6 founding members of the co-op, and we organize internal votes because we will hopefully be transitioning to a non-profit organization, and we will have membership that will vote internally on any decision we make as a collective. So yeah, we typically, unless it's like a very obvious question that is in line with the mission of the co-op, well, then the entire membership gets to vote on decisions. You know, where it's not specifically ran by the steering committee. We're just steering in a sense. You know, hence the title of committee. But yeah, so that's typically how we do, and we obviously have a quorum and yeah.
When you meet, is it an asynchronous meeting? Like, you kind of decide what is to be voted on, or are you all kind of together in a call? How does that work?
So we have a specific steering committee meeting once every quarter, and that will be all 6 members, or most of us, maybe 5, maybe 4, and we keep minutes so people can catch up. And a lot of our meetings are also recorded, so people can catch up at a later date. But once a month, we have an open meeting that is for the entire membership, and obviously we usually designate a speaker and someone to keep the minutes, and then members can just drop in, and it's just not typical, but a town hall meeting, and we keep all of our membership up to date with like current committee actions and initiatives. And we have maybe 10 different subcommittees, like the actions committee, bylaws committee, benefits committee, campaign committee, to name a few, and all of those committees have meetings on a regular basis as well. So typically, if any decision that's going to be made that will affect the membership, it's brought up at the monthly membership meeting, and then we organize a vote.
From both a career perspective and, I guess, from a co-op perspective, whichever order you would like, what are you excited about coming down the pike?
I don't know right now. I don't know what I'm excited about right now, because we're getting kicked out of Canada, so we have to go back to Ireland next year in March. So honestly, I'm just riding the wave right now. It's hard to get excited or make super dense plans. Yeah, I'm just trying to find someone to give me some money. That's my that's my goal. Will someone pay me to do this thing that I do for free every day? Yeah, so unfortunately, I don't have a very exciting answer. But in terms of work, I am working on a small horror anthology with a couple of buddies that I'll probably kickstart next year. And I'm trying to think what else I'm involved with right now that isn't out. I have like some, yeah, I don't have anything like spectacular to announce or anything. Yeah, I'm mostly focused on getting back to Ireland in one piece.
Well, I hope that works out really well. Where can people find you?
I'm the only Aaron Losty in the world. So if you Google Aaron Losty, you'll find me. I'm on Bluesky. I'm on Instagram. Bluesky is where I'm most active. And obviously check out the Cartoonist Cooperative if you are a cartoonist. And yeah, that's, again, I'm the only Aaron Losty in the world. So you'll find me if you're looking for me.
Sounds great. Well, I hope everyone goes looking for you. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me.
Thanks so much, Ian. It was a pleasure.
You take care, okay?
Cheers. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
If you want to support The Final Straw Radio, you can subscribe to our podcast via various streaming platforms, follow, rate, and share our materials online, and learn more at tfsr.media. And if you'd like to fund our transcription work that allows for easier translation, more accessibility of content, and the zines that we produce for each interview, consider picking up some merch from us or making a one-time or recurring donation via PayPal, Stripe, Venmo, or LibrePay. Or joining our Patreon to access early release content and other goodies via the links that you can find at tfsr.media/support. Finally, if you'd like to hear us on your local radio station, visit tfsr.media/radio to find more info or reach out to us for some help. Thanks for listening. This is The Final Straw Radio. The show will later be archived at thefinalstrawradio.noblogs.org, and you can email us with questions and suggestions at thefinalstrawradio@riseup.net or thefinalstrawradio@protonmail.com. If you'd like to use any episode for your project or radio show, feel free to do so. Just send us an email to let us know. If you care to, you can send us letters at TFSR, P.O. Box 6004, Asheville, North Carolina, 28816. Programming support is brought to you by Firestorm Books. Located at 1022 Haywood Road in West Asheville, Firestorm is a bookstore and social movement space owned by its workers, in operation since 2008. Their event calendar and complete catalog of books can be found online at firestorm.coop.